Greetings and welcome to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 is about race and ethnicity, but I think that this is really the time when we start talking about minorities. And I know that oftentimes when we think of minorities, we think of people of color, Latinos, Black people, Asians, things like people like that. But I think that if you kind of zoom out, like what is a minority? It's somebody whose differences we think are significant because we're all different. So many differences among us. It's just that some differences are considered significant by the group, and other people's differences are not considered different, right? Like one of my books back there is about like the phenomenon of the stranger, right? It's because we're all different, we're all strange, we're all, like new in a sense, but some people are considered, oh, their differences make them not part of us. Like that is ultimately I think like what a minority group member is, that their differences are considered to make them different and therefore they're subject to different treatment. Personally, I think it all comes back to fear. I think that we're sort of like fearful that people are going to take our stuff or they're going to act in a way we don't understand. And so, therefore, when we see someone that we consider to be different, we're like, I don't know how they're going to act. They might hurt me or take something that I care about, and I'm going to lose. And so, I'm afraid. And so, that's going to cause me to act in a different way toward them than I would somebody who I think's differences are not considered significant, right? So let's start out here talking about race and ethnicity. Ethnicity is about difference of culture, right? An ethnicity is related to the way somebody dresses or their religion or their national origin, which is not culture, but it's like if somebody is from Puerto Rico, that is their ethnicity, right? So it's something about the way they're doing life or where they're the country that they're from, right? So that's ethnicity. Race is actually is different in most ways because while I could be from a variety of different cultures, I could practice a variety of religions and consider myself a part of various groups. My race are physical differences in which people have, right? So these are things that are noticeable, usually pretty easy. Like you're going to notice somebody's race at a moment's notice. Otherwise, it's it's not really useful in the sense of categorizing people, right? And I say that with kind of being sad because unfortunately we've used race as a category to elevate some people and tear down others, right? So race is based upon physical characteristics, and what characteristics are those? Like hair texture, it's the amount of pigment in your skin, which gives you coloration of the skin, facial features, right? And the reason why our book argues that you could consider race to be man made, not because we're not different, but the categories that you put people in. A lot of people look at me and they're like, I don't know what race you are, right? Because there's certain boxes that we put people in, right? And whether I belong in one box or another box is up to the group to decide. So that's why they argue that race is man-made because during certain points of our history, the Irish were not considered to be white, and neither were Italians or Polish people or Jewish people. And yet today we would be considered white. And so that's why race is kind of considered a man-made thing. Not that there aren't the differences; those differences are based in biology, but the categories are man-made. So, all right. So, what difference does this make? Well, oftentimes, based upon people's ethnicity or their race, they are subject to people's prejudice. And a prejudice is just a thought of inferiority. Like you're one of those people, therefore you're probably not good at chess, right? Whatever. That exists up here in our brains, right? So you think about prejudice as a thought pattern, against a group of people, and really, it sort of steals away your individuality. Like that's sort of That's the problem. Not that people can't be bad at chess or be a jerk or a terrible worker. Those other things are true. But it's just that, oh, you're one of those people. Therefore, I don't really need to know you. I'm going to just assume that you are like my beliefs about the group you're from, right? Discrimination is about actions. I'm not going to hire you. I'm not going to be your friend. I'm not going to let you into the country. I'm not going to let you buy a house in this neighborhood. That's discrimination, and usually it's based upon prejudices, right? So if the prejudice is, oh, you're one of these people, therefore you're not going to be good at chess, I'm not going to ask you to be on the chess team, that would be an example of individual discrimination. Institutional discrimination is where the big group treats people in a way that's it's not even so much individual. So, for instance, we'll talk about here in a little bit, like certain groups of people are much more likely to, uh, you know, be disabled, die sooner, go to prison, things like that. And we would say that's probably not it's not individual discrimination. That's just like the whole society, like being in America and other places too, of course. You're more likely, if you're part of these groups, to have these bad things happen to you, right? One of the things to realize when it comes to discrimination and prejudice is that these things matter because we are social creatures. So, despite what we may say, the fact that we don't care about what other people think about us, their thoughts actually really matter, right? Because we want other people to look at us and say, Jesse, you're doing well, right? That's what I want, right? Everybody wants that. Everybody wants people to do that, regardless what they, regardless what they say. And if they don't, there are people occasionally who don't. That is, there's a mental health disorder for that, and oftentimes we see about those in the news. Um, People who have, they're psychopathic. They don't have, they genuinely don't care, and sometimes that can make them very, very dangerous, right, toward us. So, and we work cooperatively. Like, we do schooling together. We are very intertwined. We're not living independently as people. Maybe once upon a time we did. Like, we lived on these, in a farm far away from everybody else, and we relied only upon ourselves and our family for survival. But that probably didn't happen, and it certainly doesn't happen today because we are interacting in our companies and our governments and the school systems, and all of these things require people who, if they bring with them prejudice and discrimination, that thing that matters, like that impacts certain groups differently. And so, what are some outcomes? Well, so if you think about this as 100,000 people of each group, 100,000 whites. Of those 100,000 whites, 465 of them are incarcerated. Again, another group of 100,000 Latinos, 1,091 of them are incarcerated. And of the group of 100,000 blacks, 2,724 of them are incarcerated. So you have a lot more Latinos and blacks in prison as a percentage, and I think actually as a real number too, compared to whites. What else? Well, let's look at government. When you look at government leadership, and when you look at state leadership, you have 91% whites. If everything were equal, it would be about 72% whites, and so whites are overrepresented in governments. It should be around 12% African Americans. It should be around 18% Hispanics. It should be about, I don't know, 8% Asian Americans and 2% Native Americans. So you have a disproportionate number of whites. All right. What else? Life expectancy by ethnicity. How long are people expected to live? And if you look at this broken down based upon race, and what you see is that, well, first of all, this is interesting. In 2020, the life expectancy went down across the board. So that's interesting. That's probably due to COVID. But Asians are expected to live 83.6 years, Hispanics 77.9, whites 77.4, or I should say non-Hispanic whites. And then non-Hispanic blacks, 71.5, and non-Hispanic Indian or Native Alaskan natives, 67.1. So there's a difference there. What is being done? Well, I think today you see a lot of is around education. We're spending a lot of energy trying to teach people to be more open. If the natural reaction to difference is fear, it's trying to teach people, hey, actually, this fear that you're feeling is unfounded, right? And you can be more accepting of differences. And here's the positive sides of being more accepting of differences. We also have laws like non-discrimination laws against housing and against jobs, and we are, there are protests and there are people trying to raise awareness on social media and politically to bring more equality into American society, right? With the idea being that nobody is held back based upon the ethnicity and the race that they are, right? The idea that we are a land of the free and that we don't treat people based upon stereotypes or past history or what your parents did or were about, but we're treating you as an individual. That's the dream here. So thank you for watching till the end.